The small stage at the community music fundraiser in New Hampshire trembled under golden lights, blending seamlessly with the soft rock blasting from the speakers. The local crowd, kids, parents, and seniors, gathered around the outdoor venue, clutching soda cups and waving signs in support of arts education. A large banner hung behind the stage, shimmering in the sunlight. Music for the future. Jake, a 17-year-old libertarian, stepped onto the stage, an electric guitar slung across his shoulder like a warrior preparing for battle. His friends in the audience cheered, "Go, Jake!" Without hesitation, he plugged into the amp, flipped the switch, and launched into his performance. The first note exploded from his fingers, a lightning-fast tapping sequence, sharp and relentless, cutting through the air with raw energy. His left hand blurred across the fretboard, while his right hand alternate picked with machine-like precision. The younger crowd gasped, some shouting, "So cool!" Jake smirked and threw in a sweep-picking run, his fingers gliding like a gust of wind, unleashing a ferocious cascade of notes. He yelled above the distortion, "This is free music, way beyond that outdated conservative stuff." His friends erupted into applause. A long-haired guy hollered, "Jake's the best." But some of the older folks remained unimpressed. One muttered, "Fast, but nothing special." Then a murmur rippled through the crowd. The back gate swung open, and Karoline Leavitt stepped in, White House press secretary and the event's guest of honor. She wore a neatly rolled-up white shirt, fitted jeans, and leather shoes dusted with road dirt. The moment the crowd recognized her, cheers erupted. "It's Karoline Leavitt." Phones shot up to snap photos. Kids waved excitedly while parents whispered, "She's here to support the kids." Karoline flashed a warm smile, nodded to the organizers, and made her way to the instrument display, a fundraising auction item. Jake's playing faltered slightly as his eyes flicked to her, his brow furrowing. Karoline stopped before a black Fender Stratocaster, her fingers grazing its body as if testing the wood. An organizer handed her the guitar with a grin. "Give it a try, Karoline." She nodded, plugged into a small amp, and flipped the switch. A warm, low note rang out, clean, unhurried. A few onlookers nodded in approval. Jake sneered, turning to his friends. "Check out this MAGA chick. Bet she only talks big, can't actually play." His crew burst into laughter. "She's probably gonna strum some conservative country to flex on Twitter," one snickered. Their voices weren't exactly quiet, and a few nearby folks glanced over. Karoline, unfazed, looked up. Her gaze slid to Jake, her expression calm, coolly confident, like facing reporters in the briefing room. She tuned the strings, plucked another note. This one sharper, deeper. More approving nods from the crowd. Jake stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "Hey, Leavitt, think you're better than me?" His voice cut through the outdoor space, overpowering the music from the corner speakers. The crowd hushed for a moment, then buzzed with anticipation. Jake smirked. "I challenge you to a guitar duel, right here in front of everyone. You up for it, press secretary?" His friends hollered, "Take her down, Jake." Phones shot up again, flashes flickering like a mini-storm. Karoline stood still, one hand resting lightly on the Fender's neck. Her eyes locked on Jake's, assessing him with a faint, knowing smile, like sizing up an unworthy opponent. "Guitar duel?" she repeated, her voice low but crisp, slicing through the murmurs. She stepped onto the stage. "Sure." The crowd exploded. "Karoline's in," someone shouted. An older woman whispered to her friend, "That loudmouth kid's in over his head." Her friend nodded. "Karoline doesn't mess around." Jake grinned, eyes blazing. "You're toast, Leavitt. You won't last a minute against me." He cranked his amp, a low buzz humming ominously. Karoline adjusted her volume knob, their amps mingling like two forces about to collide. Jake turned to the crowd, raising a fist. "Who wants to see me crush this MAGA chick?" Cheers erupted from the younger crowd. Some adults crossed their arms, their curious eyes shifting toward Karoline. A middle-aged man muttered to his wife, "He's cocky, but Karoline's no rookie." She smiled. "Just wait." Karoline didn't reply. She slung the guitar strap over her shoulder and stood tall, fingers poised on the neck. "You start," she said, voice steady but challenging, just loud enough for Jake to hear. Her amp buzzed softly, a quiet warning. Jake jutted his chin forward, growling, "This is freedom versus conservatism, and I'm going to win." Jake's amp roared as he maxed out the distortion, a deep, snarling rumble like a race car revving at the starting line. The crowd, kids, parents, and seniors, clustered around the outdoor space, all eyes locked on him, standing with his, legs apart, electric guitar slung across his chest. Jake swept his fiery gaze over the audience before locking onto Karoline Leavitt. "Watch this, Leavitt," he bellowed, his voice overpowering the soft rock humming from the corner speakers. "This is real music, you've got no shot," his friends hollered from below. "Take her down, Jake." Smirking, he raised his hand and attacked the strings like a tornado. From the first note, he exploded. A flurry of lightning-fast hammer-ons and pull-offs rang out, slicing through the air in a storm of sound, distorted and wild. His left hand raced across the fretboard, relentless, while his right hand alternate picked at breakneck speed. The younger kids gawked, some shouting, "Jake's insane," he sneered, doubling down with a two-handed tapping run, his fingers hammering the high frets like a mad scientist unleashing chaos. The sound wailed through the outdoor space, drowning out even the rustling breeze in the nearby field. And he wasn't done. With a flick of his wrist, Jake transitioned into sweep picking, his fingers brushing the strings like wind through tall grass, creating a smooth yet ferocious cascade of notes. His friends clapped wildly. "Leavitt can't keep up," a long-haired kid shouted. Jake nodded to the beat, soaking in the moment as if he were shredding on a grand stadium stage, not just a community fundraiser. He leaned into exaggerated expressions, grimacing, tilting his head, sticking his tongue, out like a true rock star. A young girl below filmed on her phone, jaw dropped. "He's nuts." Mid-solo, Jake yelled, "Top that, MAGA." He glanced at Karoline, expecting a flinch, a reaction, something, but she didn't move. She just stood there, one hand resting lightly on the fender's neck, watching calmly. Unshaken. She nodded slightly, as if waiting for him to finish his showboating. Jake smirked, thinking, she's toast. Determined to bury her, he cranked his speed even higher, fingers blurring across the fretboard. Sweat rolled down his face. He launched into another complex tapping run, then yanked the whammy bar, making his guitar scream. A high, piercing wail like skidding tires on asphalt. Some seniors winced, covering their ears. A few shook their heads. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Jake's friends cheered wildly. "She's done." A few kids bounced to the beat, their eyes gleaming. But the adults just nodded politely. A middle-aged man whispered to his wife, "Fast, but exhausting." She agreed. All flash, no depth. Jake didn't hear, lost in his own world where speed was everything. He finished with a final string bend, yanking the whammy bar again, letting the note scream before releasing it into silence. The amp buzzed low. He stepped back, arms crossed, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. "There!" Jake shouted, his voice echoing across the stage. "That's freedom's music. Fast, strong, unbeatable. Can you do that, Leavitt?" His friends laughed. "Bet she's shaking." He turned to Karoline, eyes daring her to quit, but she didn't. She didn't even blink. Instead, she just smiled. Cool, sharp, unbothered. Then she stepped forward. Her leather shoes clicked softly on the wood, just enough to hush the murmuring crowd. Her fingers adjusted the amp's volume. A low buzz hummed from the black Fender Stratocaster. Jake raised a brow. Karoline met his gaze, tilting her head slightly. "Real music, huh?" she murmured, voice clear and precise, slicing through the crowd's whispers. She tightened the strap over her shoulder, stood tall, fingers ready on the neck. The crowd held its breath, phones lifted higher. Flashes twinkled like stars. Jake smirked, still smug, but somewhere deep inside, a flicker of doubt crept in. No warm-up, no theatrics, just a single note. Karoline struck the first tone. A deep, powerful sound boomed from her amp, rich and alive, like distant thunder rolling in from the horizon. Some seniors nodded instinctively, their expressions shifting from polite interest to something closer to respect. Then she launched, not at Jake's frantic speed, but with something far more dangerous. A classic rock riff, sharp and brimming with soul, rang out through the fundraiser. A riff everyone recognized, Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. The crowd stirred. Karoline's fingers glided over the fretboard, not a chaotic blur but precise, deliberate. Each note hammered the air with weight. The guitar didn't scream. It sang. Not shrill, not desperate. Just warm, gripping, and alive. She didn't rush. She didn't overact. She didn't need to. Karoline slid effortlessly into a short solo, her left hand bending the strings gently, weaving a soaring melody. Her right hand picked with total control, her touch refined, confident. This wasn't noise. It was a story. A young girl in the crowd grinned, pumping her fist. Karoline rocks. A middle-aged man murmured to his wife. Now that's soulful playing. Phones shot up everywhere, flashes bursting across the outdoor space like tiny fireworks. Karoline pushed the solo to its peak, fingers dancing across the fretboard with effortless precision. A quick run of notes, fast but never sloppy, rang out, each tone crisp and deliberate, like a speech delivered from the White House podium. She tilted her head slightly, focused, her right hand nudging the whammy bar just enough to underscore the power. The sound swept through the crowd, pulling them in. Kids bobbed their heads without realizing. Parents nodded to the beat. An event organizer leaned to a colleague. She's shutting him down. The colleague nodded. Knew it. Karoline's no joke. Up on stage, Jake stood frozen. Arms still crossed, but his smug grin was gone. He muttered, "Just luck," low enough that his friends wouldn't hear. Deep down, though, he felt it. Something in her playing unsettled him. Not speed, not flash. Confidence like she had nothing to prove. His crew quieted. The long-haired kid tried to rally. Hey, it's decent, but Jake's better. But his voice lacked conviction. His eyes darted away. Karoline ended on a long, low note, letting it linger before muting the strings with her palm. The amp faded into silence. Then, thunderous applause. Cheers erupted from everywhere. An older man yelled, "Karoline's amazing!" A young girl turned to her friend, eyes wide. She just smoked him. Phones kept rolling, flashes popping like a victory parade. Karoline stood tall, hands resting loosely on her guitar. Her eyes swept the crowd, then landed on Jake. She tilted, her head. Cool, sharp. How's that, kid? Her voice was even, but cut like a knife. A subtle echo of Jake's earlier taunt thrown right back at him. The crowd laughed. A few extra claps rang out. All eyes turned to Jake. He swallowed hard. Hands clenched tighter. He was losing them. Fine, he shouted, voice too loud, trying to drown out the applause. You're decent, but that was just a warm-up. I'll show you. Real domination. His friends rallied, shouting, "Yeah, Jake, crush her." But some adults just shook their heads. An older woman whispered, "This kid's clueless." Karoline didn't respond. She just smiled faintly, cool, confident, unshaken, and stepped back, resting a hand on the neck of her guitar. A silent invitation. Your move. Jake's jaw tightened, his heart pounded. He couldn't lose. Not to Karoline Leavitt. Not with the crowd's doubt pressing down on him. Jake took a deep breath and flipped his amp back on. A low, menacing hum vibrated through the air. He shot Karoline a glare, fiery and defiant. She just got lucky. Speed is everything, and I'll prove it. Slinging his strap over his shoulder, he stood tall, adrenaline surging. His fingers trembled, just slightly. Then he roared, voice booming across the outdoor space. This is real music. The crowd fell silent, eyes locked on the stage. Phones lifted, waiting for the next round. Karoline didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched, hand light on the Fender's neck. Calm, unshaken, Jake dove in instantly. A flurry of lightning-fast notes exploded from his guitar. Hammer-ons, pull-offs, a sonic storm even faster than before. The amp's distortion screamed, overpowering the soft rock humming from the corner speakers. His jaw clenched. Fingers raced across the fretboard at a terrifying pace, sweat streaming down his face. "Watch this," he yelled mid-solo, eyes flicking to the crowd, craving their cheers. He threw in another two-hand tapping run, index and middle fingers hammering. The high frets. Then, a note slipped, a tiny misstep, barely noticeable, but some seniors frowned. He pushed forward, wrist snapping into sweep picking, fingers brushing the strings faster than ever, trying to bury his mistake, trying to bury her. But the pressure was too much. A second note slipped, a faint buzz, breaking the flow. His friends still clapped. "Sick, bro." But the older crowd stopped nodding. A middle-aged man whispered to his wife. "Fast but messy." She nodded, way behind Karoline. Jake didn't hear, but he felt it. The vibe had shifted, and he wasn't the star anymore. His jaw locked tighter. Sweat soaked through his t-shirt. "I have to win." His eyes flicked to Karoline. She was still there, still calm, still watching, and it drove him crazy. "You're outmatched," he bellowed, slamming into a denser solo. Alternate picking mixed with tapping, fingers blurring in a desperate frenzy, but the speed overpowered him. A third note went off key. Then a bend went too far, the guitar squealing like skidding tires. The crowd fell silent. Some seniors shook their heads. An older woman muttered, "He's just throwing notes around." Jake tried to recover. He yanked the whammy bar, making the guitar scream high, but it didn't hit. This time it was just chaos. Jake's notes clashed, a frantic, disconnected mess. His fingers stumbled, sweat stinging his eyes, forcing him to blink rapidly. He pushed harder, another sweep-picking run, but his fingers slipped. A shrill buzz cut through the amp. His friends stopped cheering. The long-haired kid shrugged. "Hey, it's okay." His voice trailed off, enthusiasm gone. Jake panted, eyes darting over the crowd, searching for awe. He found only polite nods. Blank stares. "There!" he shouted, clinging to his confidence. Desperate, he yanked the whammy bar one last time, letting the note screech and fade into an ugly, trembling whimper. The amp growled a low buzz as he stepped back. His hands shook. His eyes darted. The crowd clapped sparingly. No cheers, no frenzy. A young girl whispered to her friend, fast but all over the place. An older man shook his head. Karoline did way better. Jake heard it, and something inside him tightened. For the first time, defeat crept in, his jaw clenched. His fingers curled tighter around his guitar, forcing himself to act unfazed. He turned to Karoline, forcing out a smirk. "Well, Leavitt, think you can top that?" he called, voice loud but unsteady. His friend stayed quiet, eyes averted. Karoline tilted her head, then spoke, low, clear, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Let me show you what music really is." She stepped forward. Her leather shoes clicked softly against the wooden stage, each step measured, deliberate. Her fingers tweaked the amp's volume. A low hum vibrated from the black Fender Stratocaster, deep and steady, like a storm warning. The crowd held its breath. Phones rose higher. Flashes exploded, illuminating the stage. No warm-up, no theatrics, just one note. A bold, deep tone thundered from the amp, rich and alive, shaking the stage. The crowd froze. Some seniors nodded, eyes lighting up, as if sensing something big was coming. Then, she launched. Not a slow solo, not a warm-up riff, an explosive rock assault, raw, alive. The opening riff of AC/DC's Back in Black tore through the night. Her fingers moved over the fretboard, not Jake's frantic blur, but precise. Decisive, each note slammed like a hammer to the chest. The guitar didn't scream, it sang, not shrill, not wild. Controlled. Powerful. Undeniable. Jake stood still, his grip tightening around his guitar. His eyes flickered. Karoline didn't even glance at him. She was locked in, flowing into a soulful, soaring solo, bending the strings with finesse, shaping every note into something alive. Her right hand picked with absolute command, weaving a sound that didn't just fill the air, it told a story. Each note carried weight, not just music, but experience. Tense days at the podium. Sleepless nights with her toddler, battles with the press, it was all in the music. The crowd felt it. A young girl shouted, "Karoline's unreal." A middle-aged man murmured to his wife, "That's from the heart." Phones filmed non-stop, flashes, firing like 1,000 tiny fireworks. Karoline pushed the climax higher, adding a flurry of quick notes, not to flaunt speed, but to underscore her power. Each tone crisp and sharp, like the words she'd once used to defend her stance on national television. Then, she nudged the whammy bar, just lightly. Not a scream, not a shriek. Just enough to make the guitar wail, a perfect, electrifying crescendo. The sound flooded the outdoor space, sweeping through the crowd. Some kids bounced to the rhythm. A few adults nodded unconsciously, caught in the sheer force of it. An organizer whispered to a colleague. "She just knocked him out." The colleague nodded. Karoline Leavitt's #1. Jake swallowed hard, hands trembling, eyes glued to Karoline. He wanted to argue, to shout that she was nothing, but the sound from her fender silenced him. She didn't. "Just play," she conquered. No frantic speed, no flashy tricks, just pure talent, pure emotion. The crowd erupted, thunderous applause. Cheers echoed everywhere. An older man bellowed, "Karoline's the champ!" Karoline ended on a long, bold, final note, letting it hang. Then, gently, she muted the strings with her palm. The amp faded into a soft, steady hum. The crowd exploded again, clapping like thunder. Whistles, shouts. Someone screamed, "Karoline's a legend!" A kid jumped up and down near the stage, pumping his fists. Jake stood frozen. Jaw dropped, hands limp by his guitar. What just happened? His mind reeled. He'd been outplayed, outmatched, utterly destroyed. Karoline turned to him, her voice calm. Cool. Even. Sharp. "Want to keep going?" The crowd laughed. A few extra claps rang out, all eyes locked on Jake, delighted, expectant, waiting to see if he'd embarrass himself further. Jake swallowed hard, hands still shaking, searching for a comeback, for something, but he found nothing. His friends were dead silent. The long-haired kid muttered, "She's good," then turned away, like he couldn't face Jake anymore. Karoline didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She just nodded slightly to the crowd. And with that, she walked away. Icy, a wordless statement. The applause roared again, louder, longer. A middle-aged man leaned toward his wife, whispering, "She's not just a talker. She plays better too." His wife chuckled. "That kid's out of moves." Jake stood there, breathing, hard, eyes blank. He hadn't just lost a guitar duel. He'd lost completely to Karoline Leavitt, a conservative he'd once mocked. His mind spun, defeat crushing his chest like a weight he couldn't lift. The crowd kept cheering, phones filming, flashes popping everywhere. An organizer shouted, "Karoline Leavitt, star of the night." Jake bowed his head, gripping his guitar tight, but he had no words. No actions, just the cold, undeniable truth. This time, he'd been dead wrong, and Karoline had proven it, before hundreds of eyes. She stood tall, hands loose by her fender, Stratocaster. Her icy gaze swept the crowd, then landed on Jake. She stepped closer. Her leather shoes clicked softly against the wooden stage, snapping him out of his daze. The crowd quieted, leaning in. curious, waiting. Karoline's eyes held no arrogance, no mockery, just calm certainty, the kind that came from knowing you were right. Then she spoke. "You can hate my views," she said, voice low but cutting through the silence like a knife. "You can hate me for being a conservative. But music doesn't need politics. It needs heart." Jake swallowed hard, clutching his guitar. Her words stabbed him, not with venom, but with truth. He opened his mouth to argue. Nothing came out, because he knew she was right. Speed, technique, flash, all the things he'd prided himself on, felt hollow against her music. The crowd watched in silence, waiting. For his response, a middle-aged man murmured, "She didn't just win, she taught him a lesson." His wife nodded. "Hope the kid gets it." Karoline tilted her head slightly, eyes still locked on him. "I don't play guitar to show off," she continued. Her voice was steady, but heavy, like the way she tackled every challenge in her career. "I play to unwind long days at the White House, to get through sleepless nights with my toddler, to find myself when the press comes at me from all sides." She took a step closer. What do you play for?" Jake bowed his head, hands trembling, staring at his guitar. He'd never thought about it. He played to prove something, to flex, to show the world he was freer, wilder, better. But now, standing before Karoline, he felt small. Karoline's voice softened, almost encouraging. "You've got talent, but if you just chase speed, you'll never touch real music." Her gaze didn't waver. "Let your heart lead, not your pride." Jake looked up, meeting her eyes, for the first time without defiance. Her words weren't a jab. They were advice, honest, direct, the way she always was. A young girl whispered to her friend, "Karoline's not just good, she knows how to teach." Jake took a deep breath, still gripping his guitar. He started to speak, his voice came out hoarse. He stopped, looked at his guitar. Then, back at Karoline. "Can I try again?" he asked, voice quiet, but genuine, free of arrogance, for the first time. The crowd stirred, buzzing, a few clapped lightly. "He's turning around," someone murmured. Karoline smiled, a small, warm smile, her first of the night. "Play," she said, nodding slightly. "But this time, let your heart lead." Jake bowed his head, took a deep breath, lifted his guitar, flipped on the amp. A low hum vibrated through the speakers. But he didn't crank the distortion. He didn't dive into a speed run. He stood still, breathed in, then plucked the first note. Slow, warm, unhurried. His fingers glided lightly over the neck. Not wild shredding, not chaos. A simple, flowing melody, like he was searching for something. He bent a string, gently. Let the sound breathe. For the first time, he focused on feeling. Not speed, it wasn't perfect, it wasn't complex, but it was real. The crowd stayed quiet. Then, a few clapped softly. Not the frenzy from before. Something different, something warmer. An older man nodded. "He's learning," he murmured. A woman whispered. Karoline changed him. Jake stopped, looked up at her, his gaze, no longer doubtful, but respectful. Karoline nodded, satisfied, her icy stare softened. "Better," she said, voice low, "but you've got more to learn." Then, she turned, nodded to the crowd. The applause rose, again following her as she stepped off the stage. Jake stood there, hand on the guitar's neck, eyes pensive, watching her go. He didn't win, but something shifted, not defeat, a new start. The crowd still clapped, but this time, Jake felt no pressure, just a single question echoing in his mind. What do I play for? Karoline had given him something far greater than a loss. She'd given him a reason to play. The answer was there, and for the first time Jake wanted to explore it. He bowed his head, fingers brushing the strings. A single low note rang out, slow, unhurried, unlike the frantic shredding he'd once worshipped. His friends below slipped, away quietly. No more cheers, no more jabs. A few in the crowd lingered, watching with curious, supportive eyes. An older man nodded. He's starting to get it. Jake said nothing. He just stood there, hand resting on his guitar. Defeat fading, giving way to something fresh, not pride. Curiosity. As Karoline Leavitt left the stage, the fundraiser audience posted short clips to Twitter and TikTok. Karoline. KO's arrogant kid. One tweet paired the caption with a video of her flawless solo. On TikTok, a split-screen comparison of Jake's sloppy attempt next to Karoline's masterclass performance went viral. When you challenge the wrong person. Sitting. In a corner, Jake scrolled his phone. The comments flooded in. He's too full of himself. Karoline's a legend. Public pressure hit him hard, but Karoline's words lingered, grounding him, not as humiliation, but as a lesson. The next day, the Duel broke out of New Hampshire and went nationwide. Millions of views in hours, headlines spread across news sites. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt schools cocky guitarist. The hashtag socks Karoline vests Jake shot to Twitter's top trends. Thousands of comments. That kid's ego got wrecked. Deserved it. Karoline's Back in Black was fire. From Fox News to CNN, the take was the same. Karoline Leavitt proves. Talent beyond politics. But Jake didn't care about the headlines. He sat on the edge of his bed, headphones on, electric guitar across his lap. No more lightning-fast metal solos. This time, he listened. Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. A song Karoline had suggested before she left. The gentle opening notes flowed through his headphones. Jimmy Page's delicate arpeggios filled his ears. Jake closed his eyes. Fingers moving slowly over the neck, trying to feel the bends. He paused. Tried. Again. Then, a faint smile. Not smug, not triumphant, a smile of discovery. He pulled off the headphones, setting them aside, his eyes fixed on his guitar. She's right, he whispered, voice quiet, but firm. It's not speed, it's heart. He plucked a simple sequence, let the sound breathe. No rush, no need to impress. For the first time, he played to feel, to understand himself. Karoline's question echoed back. What do you play for? Before he played to prove something, to mock conservatism, to claim superiority. But now he saw, music wasn't a fight, it was a connection. Jake stood, walked to the window. The stars stretched wide above him. He thought of Karoline, not as the MAGA chick he'd mocked, but as someone who had opened a new door for him. She hadn't just defeated him, she'd changed him. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then turned back, and grabbed his guitar. This time, he played a short piece, slow, flowing, like an unspoken thank you. Not perfect, not complex, but real. And for the first time, he felt truly tied to the music. He set the guitar down, smiling, not for victory, but for finding something worth chasing. The final note lingered in the quiet room, like a promise to himself. He would learn. He would play from the heart, like Karoline did, and this time, he'd do it right, beyond the battle. The lesson in music and politics, Jake's journey, from arrogance to understanding, reflects the deep ideological and generational clashes in America today. A self-proclaimed resistance warrior, he wore his beliefs loudly, convinced that his brand of rebellion trumped tradition. Karoline, a White House press secretary, stood as his opposite. Their guitar duel was more than a contest. It was a symbolic showdown, freedom versus conservatism, played out on stage. But when Jake lost, he didn't just lose to her skill, he lost to his own bias. Karoline, despite his MAGA chick label, didn't fight back with politics. She fought with music, and when she said, Music doesn't need politics. It needs heart. She didn't just mean music, she meant everything. Her words stuck. And Jake, who had only seen her through a political lens, was forced to listen, to learn, to see past labels. That's the lesson. In today's world, where people define each other by politics, where battles are fought in comment sections instead of conversations, the story of Jake and Karoline challenges us to set aside prejudice, to seek connection. Because, like Jake learned, the real value isn't in winning the argument. It's in understanding the music and maybe each other. Thanks for joining Jake and Karoline's journey to find music's heart. Subscribe for more stories on breaking past bias.